I'm back. Listeners, there is no other appropriate way to open up this show. Not after the last time I addressed all of you in my previous installment. I'm back. Those two words have never meant so much to me more than right now. This very moment. Because this isn't like previous returns. This time is different. This time I directly address and put to rest the matter that has ultimately been ailing and causing me so much distress for nearly the last 2 years. I'm going to address it all: the who, the what, the where, the why, the when, the how. The when is right now, Sunday, June 11th of 2017. The how is by talking about it, and the where is right here on another point of view. So let's get started with the why. And in true fashion to keeping with the show, I'm going to do that with a little number you might have heard about before called Happening Now. Sort of. Listeners, I started this show on the first Sunday of 2015, and when I did so without knowing that 2015 would prove to be an unforgettable year. Completely different from every other year of my life, with some of the most significant events occurring. Events that I still feel repercussions for to this day. When I started this show, I did so because I honestly felt like the world needed someone to be willing to at times inform, entertain, and when applicable, offer up what I thought was a sound, modest opinion on subject matters, while encouraging others to offer up their own points of view. Because more so than anything else, I thought the world was becoming a place where certain individuals were left unheard or feeling unable to safely state their own views on things without fear of reprisal. People will speak today, but so few seem to actually say anything. Where once we could agree to disagree respectfully, it seemed like the world was moving in a direction where disagreeing with someone meant not being willing to hear their side of the argument, or worse, resorting to violent tendencies. Since starting this show, I had gone on sudden extended hiatus a total of 3 separate times. The first was between January and April of 2016. The second was from June to December of 2016, and the most recent one, which I am returning from now, has been from February of this year to right now. During my hiatus, as I struggled with a personal matter, I kept informed on what was happening around the world, and it was truly saddening. More than anything, it was heart-wrenching. I cannot even begin to explain the sadness I felt when reading about how a 74-year-old father of 10 children and grandfather of 14 grandchildren was senselessly killed on the morning of Easter Sunday in Cleveland by a man he had never met before. A tragedy made even worse by the fact that the irrational murderer posted it onto social media for the world to see, and it was as if evil itself, on a day that celebrated the return of the one who saved us from eternal damnation, was laughing at all of us. Nor can I describe the disappointment I felt upon learning that more than 20 people were killed in a bombing during a concert in London last month. A concert where the audience was mostly comprised of women and children. A story only made more disappointing when less than 1 month later, the same country experienced another attack, this time with knives, on one of its iconic bridges that resulted in 8 dead and 48 injured. And I definitely can't bring myself to describe the absolute disgust I felt upon finding out about a chemical attack that killed several dozen people, including children, in a country going into its 6th year of eternal warfare. Why do I need to put this personal matter behind me? Why did I come back? Because this shouldn't be normal life for people. This isn't right. And I don't care if I'm shouting into a void, or if only a handful of people are listening, or a million. I give a damn about this world, and I sure as hell give a damn about my listeners. I may have fallen in love 2 years ago, but 2.5 years ago I fell in love with doing this every Sunday, week in and week out, because you all keep me going. And when it's just me, my thoughts, and this microphone, I feel like I'm one step closer to making sense out of this crazy world we're all living in. That's why I came back. Now to answer the what, and if it's on this show, there's only one way I know how to do that. Let's talk internet. 2 years ago on this exact month, a dear friend of mine and someone I care deeply about found themselves in an unenviable situation of a personal nature. Naturally, I wanted to help her as best as I could to get through it, and during that situation, a closeness developed between us, and I fell in love with her. But you see, things weren't so simple. Having just gone through a troubling event, she wasn't entirely sure where she stood on things between us, and it was during this time that she fell under the spell of what I can only describe as an evil sorcerer. A man who offered deceptive promises, had overbearing tendencies, and a sociopathic demeanor. He didn't love her, though I'm sure if he ever came on this show he would argue he does, but he does not. He otherwise wouldn't have put her through what he did. Regardless, he took her away and told her never to speak to me again. She had her moments of clarity where the spell he had over her seemed to break, and she would rid herself of him and his unbearable presence, but slowly and surely she was losing herself. With every broken promise to me, with every instance that her resolve would collapse in favor of his will, she was slowly becoming less and less recognizable as the person I fell in love with. To try and seal the deal further, he did the equivalent of taking her away to a tower in a distant land away from many of her friends and family, who he was so generous as to threaten to kick out of the tower if they visited her. As is the case with most tyrants, they've only their power as long as they are obeyed and not resisted. But alas, she found in his company that he was more unbearable and loathsome, which isn't to say he didn't start to think the same of her to some regard. And then one day, unexpectedly, she contacted me and told me of a terrible thing he had done. Something I had long suspected but could never convince her was the case, due in large part to the spell he had over her. And she came to me, and like all other times before, in her moment of resolve, she indicated that this was the last straw, and how the spell was finally broken. But I knew better. By this point I had seen and heard it all before, and so I said my piece to her, as I had done in the past instances, gave my thoughts on how she shouldn't go back to him, sever ties and all that other sort. But she decided she needed to confront him, so she went on her way. It was her struggle, and sure enough I was right. It was her struggle to lose. Yet again she fell under his spell. And then about a month later I hear back from her. It's a brief discussion, but one that piqued my curiosity. I was given an individual's name and a phone number, neither of which were familiar to me, but apparently this person had a grudge against the sorcerer, so I sought them out. Thank goodness for telephones, truly. So then, I've answered the why and the what. Now to answer the most important question, who? And in doing so we can put this matter to rest, because it's definitely time to give it a rest. I called the number only to be sent directly to voicemail. I called again, the same thing. So in a moment of basically going for the last-ditch effort, I left a voicemail indicating that I held a rather sizable amount of disdain for the sorcerer, and I wished to find out why they seemed to hold a dislike for the sorcerer as well. Days passed, no response. Then, I received a message in reply, and a dialogue between this person and myself opened up. She indicated that she knew the sorcerer intimately, and my interest only grew. Finally, it seemed I had the chance to put an end to the spell that blinded this person I loved so dearly. I asked for this individual, whose name I will not give, but whose initials are V.S. Oh, the irony. To offer me proof that their claims were true, and to contact the person I cared about to lift the spell. She declined, indicating she had her own circumstances with someone she was with, that left her fearful of reprisal and repercussion should she reveal herself. I asked with such insistence, but she refused to help me by getting directly involved. She could tell I wanted the information desperately, and so she offered up a price, a hefty one at that. and told me she'd sell me the key to save the one person I cared about the most. The chance to undo the spell, break the illusion, and prove my innocence from false blame. It wasn't anything ridiculous, and the cost was one I was willing to pay, so I paid a pretty penny, and she gave me the proof I needed to show the sorcerer for the scoundrel that he truly was. V.S. told me this would be the last time I would be able to reach her, and that she was putting the whole ordeal behind her. I had paid a pretty penny, and now I, and solely I, knew the truth. I relished the moment. Honestly, I did. I was finally going to save my friend from making the worst mistake she could make and ending up with such a dreadful individual. But as I got home, I grew solemn, exhausted even. With me, I had the means to end a 2-year journey, and yet, as I thought about it more and more, I didn't feel inclined to make my play and put an end to this ordeal. Perhaps it was all the broken promises the one I loved made to me that made me reconsider it. Perhaps it was all the hurtful things they told me that made me think twice. Perhaps I didn't believe, even with the undeniable evidence I had, that she would believe me. Or perhaps I reconsidered shattering her beautiful lie with an ugly truth because I had come to the conclusion that this was what she wanted all along. A beautiful lie. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what made me decide against pulling back the veil on the sorcerer and showing him for what he was. It was almost poetic, really. In the end, I suppose he gets her, but I feel as though I have won. I mean, aside from the fact that he's older, has a dreadful personality, and I'll probably outlive him because of his poor hygiene. Seriously, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if the poor fellow developed leprosy in this day and age, with habits like the one he has in regards to his hygiene. But that's not why I feel like I've won. With the information I have, I now know he is unsatisfied with what he has. And I know his secret. I know the truth. And he knows the truth. And maybe he's nervous that I might spill the beans, but he'll probably never admit it. He's got a good poker face, I'll give him that. But I'll always know. And he will too. And the person I care about will likely never know. Because if she is listening right now, I just want to say sincerely, I love you, and always will, but this is truly one secret that I'm taking to the grave. And that's the story. And now I'm back. I feel refreshed, renewed even. And now you all know my story as well, and I've got my sense of closure. That's all for this show, my magnificent listeners. I'll see you next week. I leave you now with the story of the last 2 most recent years of my life. Have a good one.